Mayor Berube is out of town and asked that I conduct the meeting, so you're stuck with me for the night. We'll keep it short. Get out of here early. Yes. We'll begin with an invocation or thought and pledge of allegiance from Councilmember Ekstrom.
An invocation. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so very grateful to be gathered together here. We're grateful for the opportunity to live in this beautiful community. We're grateful for the precipitation we've received. We're grateful for the cooler temperatures that have kept the snow intact. We're grateful to have our water supply being replenished. We're grateful for the camaraderie that we have as a community, and we're grateful for all of the opportunities that Thou hast given us. Please bless us as a leadership council that we may be able to have discussions that will be productive, that we will be able to make decisions that benefit our community and the world as a whole, especially for our country. We're so grateful for all the opportunities and freedoms that are afforded us. Please bless us with Thy Spirit and extra outpouring. Please help us in all of our decisions. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. And repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Item number 1 on our agenda was supposed to be a budget amendment public hearing. You'll notice that has been canceled. The reason that it's been canceled is that Jamie and John and our staff, as they're always looking through to make sure that we are doing the things we're supposed to be doing and not doing things we aren't supposed to be doing. Notice that a budget hearing is, the meetings are supposed to be set by the council in a public meeting. So we have in a public council meeting, we say we're going to do a public hearing on the budget amendment on this date at this time. That's news to us. So we're going to start doing that. And so tonight there will be an agenda item in which we set that public hearing for our next council meeting and then actually hold the meeting. Item number 2, we're going to pause on just a little bit. Representative Wilcox, welcome.
Oh,
How close behind you are the others? Do you?
go ahead and wait.
Okay.
I'll catch my breath and they'll get here.
We have scheduled tonight our local representatives and senators to give us a presentation on what's happening down at the legislature and what they're working on for us. They're rushing here from Capitol Hill. It's been a busy day on Capitol Hill with some of the hearings and things that they had. So we're going to give them the opportunity to get here, catch their breath, and then once they're all here and they give me the high sign that they're breathing, we'll interrupt our meeting and give them some time. So again, Representative, thank you for being here tonight. Council members will now move to our consent agenda. Call for a recognition of any conflicts of interest regarding any items on the agenda tonight. Any conflicts? Okay, great. Then we will move on. Item number 4, discussion and or action to consider our November 22nd, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at those? Any corrections, additions, deletions? Okay, I'll look for a motion then to approve those minutes.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Ekstrom.
For second.
Seconded by Councilmember Severing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Those are approved. Thank you, Council. We'll now move into our active agenda. We always start our meeting with public comments. If you have anything that you'd like to share with us this evening, please feel free to step up to the mic, state your name and the city in which you reside, and then please limit your comments to 5 minutes maximum. Anyone here like to step up to the podium? John, if you'll watch online for us.
Well, okay, go ahead and go.
Absolutely.
All right, so Kevin Burns, I live here in North Ogden, and I wasn't going to say anything, but having the opportunity to stand up here before the representatives speak. I over the last couple of years, we've heard grumblings about the state taking over the zoning laws from cities and stuff. And I'd really just like to, I don't know what the presentation is, but I'd really like to see if we can hear from the representatives tonight where that is in the legislature and how that will affect us here in our lovely little town. So hopefully Representative Wilcox was paying attention.
I'll
So
bet they addressed that tonight.
I hope so, but I got the chance to get up here before they got here.
There you go.
That's what happens when you're tardy. Thank you.
Okay.
And I can go up now if you want.
No, that'll probably incite some additional questions, Representative Wilcox. We'll let it
Not
simmer for a
an
few
answer
minutes.
yet.
Anybody online, John?
No raised hands.
Okay, anyone else here? Okay, we'll move on. Item number 6 on our active agenda tonight. Discussion and or action to consider setting a budget amendment public hearing. That's what we talked about just a moment ago. John,
Yes, council. So in reviewing the language related to public hearings or related to budget amendments, we noticed a nuance in the code that it's somewhat gray. And so we just prefer to default to the more clear black line rule of we're just always going to do it this official way. And so what we need from you is a general motion to set a public hearing for a budget amendment for the general fund, RDA fund, and enterprise funds. So those would be the 3 things that we'll be talking about. And that'll be on February 7th. Which is usually a work session night, but because we're not holding a meeting on the 14th, we're going to be doing a few business items on the 7th.
what's on the 14th?
I have no idea.
Sorry,
We've got a couple weeks to figure it out.
Okay, council. We're looking for a motion to set that meeting on February 7th at 6 o'clock.
Is there an ordinance number?
There is not.
There's no. I move that we. Oh, excuse me, no, I'm looking at the wrong one, that's why. I move that we move the budget amendment public hearing to February 7th.
Okay, is that sufficient, John?
For RDA, general fund, and enterprise.
For the general fund, the RDA, and the enterprise funds.
Okay. We have a motion by Councilmember Severing. And a second by Councilmember Ekstrom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. So for the general public, that means on the 7th, we'll have the actual public hearing where we will talk about the budget amendment considerations, just so that you'll be thinking a little bit. In the general fund, we have some costs related to a mid-year salary increase. We have our commitment to the police department regarding a 23rd officer, reducing our general fund balance from 23 to 18%. The increases for Wadman Park to make it an fully accessible playground. The increasing costs that we're anticipating for the Mountain Road Trailhead. Weaver County Transfer Station is increasing its tipping fee, so we need to talk about that and considering a rate increase. And then the money that we committed for earthwork over at Nielsen's Frozen Custard from the RDA. So be thinking about those things. If you have questions, you can reach out to myself, to John, to Jamie, any of the council members. And as we prepare for that on the 7th. Okay, let's move on then to item number 7. Discussion and or action to consider an ordinance approving the 2022 version of the North Ogden Public Works Standards and Drawings. Our presenter will be our planning director, Mr. Scott Hess.
Thank you, council. We have before you an ordinance to consider adopting the 2022 Public Works Standards. These came before the Planning Commission in a public hearing, as well as in front of the City Council But we neglected to bring forward an ordinance. So state code a few years ago required that public works standards be codified by ordinance. We're bringing that forward. This is actually as part of chapter 10, item section 6 of the North Ogden City Code. We've revised the language to have the language match what both the corporation standard drawings and the public works standards and technical specifications drawings. And then because we've had a complete streets policy in place since 2019, we amended some of the language to pull out. We now have a new 2019 complete streets policy and just have it outlined as it is. So no substantive changes, just a correction in the administration and how we're adopting and recommending these ordinances.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any questions for Mr. Hess before he sits down? Yes, council member Belfast.
There were many pages in the packet related to this, a lot. And something that struck my interest, I was wondering if yourself or someone could explain, it kind of talked about where the wells are positioned in North Ogden and how that impacts places, if you're looking around, how that can impact who builds close to those wells. And I was just kind of curious for maybe further explanation for my benefit and the public's.
So I'm not our culinary water superintendent, that'd be Jason, or our city engineer, Eric, and we have Dave here as well, but the state has guidelines on the water recharge zones. So we have
It
our.
stood up like maybe he wanted to say something.
No.
You want to?
Okay.
I'll muddle through this, and then if he wants to add something that he can, but we have our well sites are located at areas that are either convenient for providing culinary water, or we have access available to water, or it might even have just been property that the city was able to acquire and drop a well in the area. And then the water recharge zones are, one is a distance around the well that you don't build certain things, so you can't have, certain development or oil lines or gas lines or anything run within them. And then after that, it's actually time for water to go and infiltrate through the ground. So those recharge areas change in size depending on geologic conditions. And those are done through geologic survey and other geotechnical work. And we basically take those recommendations and adopt them. And then those further standards identify what land uses can go within certain proximities of the well, or what secondary measures you might have to do, like double lining pipes and other bladders and certain things around land uses. So it's we identify the area of our well sites based on proximity and ability to supply culinary water, and then those recharge areas are just geologic survey basically based. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just, it piqued my curiosity. I hadn't ever seen that map before, so it's kind of cool to hear what's behind it. Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Okay, thank you. As Mr. Hess mentioned, this needs to be done by ordinance. The ordinance number is 2023-02. Be looking for a motion to approve that ordinance, approving the 2022 version of the North Ogden Public Works Standards and Drawings. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we approve the 2022 Public Works Standards, which is ordinance 2023-02. Just to confirm, it is 2022, it's not 2023.
2023-02.
He presented it as 2022 Public Services.
That's the version. Standards were dated.
Okay,
2022, but the
2022.
ordinance will be.
Okay, yes, so- yep, so that's what I wanted.
Okay. Good clarification. We have a second.
I second.
It's been motioned by Councilmember Dowpass, seconded by Councilmember Severing. This is a roll call vote. Yes, any discussion?
Does the ordinance need to say standards and drawings?
They're,
Because the drawings are separate.
it's really three pieces. They're all,
Just if you wanted to clarify a motion.
so our city engineer said they could be called just the public works standards. They all nest together, but on the website, it's kind of three individual pieces. You have the standard drawings, the technical specifications, and the complete streets policy, which is section 21 of that specifications. So I wrote them all out in the ordinance to just be explicitly clear, but using the term public works standards, they're all kind of
Okay.
one envelope.
We'll let our attorney answer that question.
Well, so the title of the document is the North Ogden City Corporation Standard Drawings, which is the title of the document, and then it includes all of those two things that Scott
Okay.
just mentioned.
So is the ordinance okay as it was stated?
Yes, because this
I
is
mean,
the
the motion.
exhibit to it, yes.
Okay, great. Good question.
I've been called out, making sure I had something adopted correctly, so.
We all have.
Yes.
So let's start the voting. Any other council comments or questions or discussion? Okay. Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Severin.
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Representative Wilcox, would now be a good time for you guys, or do you want us to wait just a little bit longer?
We can go. Jason's probably still a good 10 minutes out.
Okay,
Or we can
Well-
wait, whatever.
council, we're going to kind of stick in right now. Item number 2, what's happening on Capitol Hill? We have
Right.
council, representative, I keep on to call you a council member, Representative Wilcox and Senator Johnson,
That would be a
Our-
promotion, yeah.
our local legislators. We'll turn some time over to you gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so, I mean, there's a number of things, when I had this conversation with, the mayor a couple weeks ago, so that's a brilliant idea. Doing it during the session is gonna be tricky. So I would suggest we do this, but we should do this like the week before the session starts next time,
Or maybe even,
or maybe the month before.
so that we could actually file a bill.
Yeah, yes.
So it actually is very helpful. I had somebody email me the other day, why don't you guys do a town hall before the session? I'm like, I do that every year. Like 2 people come and it's actually at the city council chambers usually. Right? So, and I know you've experienced that in your roles as well. Sometimes it's just hard to, like everybody has life going on, which is fine. But I think this is a good idea. So I think if we could, for staff, I suppose maybe this is a Joyce and John conversation, but if we could arrange that sometime before the session, just on a regular schedule, that'd be helpful for me to hear from you if there's something you're worried about. The only thing I really heard from the mayor in that conversation 2 weeks ago, it was what was already brought up tonight, right? He was worried about that. And I'm afraid I don't have a fun answer for you yet, because it hasn't really started. We haven't had any of those discussions. It hasn't come through rules even. We haven't talked about it in caucus. It hasn't. I did, it was included, a reference to it was included in the speaker's, I think, opening speech, which is what got the league excited. But honestly, we haven't delved deep into any of that, and it hasn't started moving. So I don't know exactly what they're going to propose. And I hesitate to comment too much on things like that I haven't been able to read or see, or any of those things. Other than, in general, I'll say that because he had, Mayor Caldwell there from Ogden, he was a highlight of the speech for the speaker on the first day. And that was because he was trying to use Mayor Caldwell as a model for Ogden City in particular, as to how to address a lot of these housing issues that we're having. Right now, I think the number they use is Ogden has 70% of the housing or low-income housing we have in the entire county. And there probably is some legitimacy to, maybe that shouldn't all be in one city kind of a conversation. But that doesn't necessarily need to lead either to, the state taking over city building code. So I'm sure there's a happy medium where we can address those things. But we really haven't seen any details yet. So it'd be making stuff up if I told you anything else. So Senator Johnson. do you have anything else, sir?
Well, with respect to that, I really think, there's property rights assigned to there, right? And if you have zoning that was attached to it when the people bought the property, they really, I would really hate to violate people's property rights, but I also wouldn't want those decisions to be made at the state. So, I think cities though could do more in terms of worrying about some of these problems, right? I think that decision belongs here, though. So other things that have been going on, I mean, yesterday in my committee, we actually passed out 7-2 a bill on school choice, as well as the largest raise we've had in teacher's salary historically, actually. And this raise actually will go directly to teachers. It doesn't increase the WPU for the district, the school board association people, and the superintendent's association were really opposed to it being worked that way. We also had a bill just hit the House committee today on transgender surgeries. So we've had a lot of fun, I guess, in the first week trying to deal with the things that are the most controversial.
So his version of fun is very different than mine. Yeah. You know, the big stuff that is gonna affect the cities haven't hit, and not just the zoning thing. Right, they're gonna be coming, there's gonna be some more water follow-ups. You know, honestly, like my cities in particular, it's been nice because my cities have mostly already been compliant with all of those things, so thank you for not being the bad example. The ones that haven't are a lot of our HOAs. The HOA issue is struggling. So when I'm getting emails from our mutual constituents about problems with that, it's not about North Ogden, it's about HOAs in our cities and some of those covenants that frankly are against the law now. So it's been hard to work through that. We may have some more teeth coming out to help deal with those issues. We've had obviously a good water year so far. Sort of been awesome. We've raised Great Salt Lake a foot. Problem is we're still down 17. So, you know, it's good, but it's definitely not the.
So if you have to keep plowing roads, be grateful.
Yeah, good stuff there. We have some, you know, there's some follow-up to the law enforcement mental health, or not law enforcement, but first responder mental health that we ran last year. And that's mostly due, and frankly, I want to couch this. I understand that you had a visit from CJC. Did Rod come talk to you? Did he share with you the data on cases in North Ogden?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not to like put a damper on the conversation, but we've had an alarming sort of increase in that through COVID in our county. And North Ogden's not exempt from those issues. So I've been very active with Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, with those teams to make sure that those that we're asking to take care of those issues have access to the care they need. So you're going to see a follow-up that includes ICAC specifically, that includes our forensic interviewers. They weren't included last year. We just, you know, missed it like you do. You think you do a really good job on something and then you learn, I need to fix it again. That happens every year, so that's okay. And then also our victims advocates. So not just those that are working with the children that are abused, but who are defending them and prosecutors that handle those cases. So we're learning as we go, and they'll continue to improve. Our fire caucus is actually pretty active. I just hung up with our firefighters group tonight. Had a good conversation with them, and we're actually copying some of their genius in the fire marshal model to handle some of our school security. That's probably my top priority bill this year is our school security bill. Overall, we had about 7,000 calls after the Uvalde shooting. It's going to include some firearms piece, which is in some separate legislation, but then also mostly it's design. We used to have really bad school fires. I don't know if everybody outside of Councilman Barker is aware of how bad it was. And until we finally had one, I think we lost like 93 kids in Chicago, where we finally said, okay, maybe we should rethink our school, construction model. We've looked at a lot of those issues in the context of, what can we do from a design standpoint? What can we do from a training standpoint? What does response look like? What is being prepared for school staff look like? All of those things. And while none of us want to imagine these things happening in our own schools, I mean, goodness, my wife's a school teacher, my mom's a school teacher, I can go down the line. We all have our kids there, and We love and want them to be safe. And it's, by the way, not statistically likely. It's very statistically unlikely that this happens. And we want to be the most prepared community. Yeah, for that scenario, if when it does. So I can report, I'm very happy with North Ogden's, with Weaver County's response. Anytime we've taken down a school, we've had the team in there drilling. Anytime we've had opportunities there, I feel like they're prepared as they can be right now. A lot of the requirements in that bill, again, we're already doing. You already have placed SROs in our secondary schools. Generally, they have a great relationship with our students. They're integrated into our administrative teams. All of those things are positive in that regard. So there won't be a huge change for our community in general, but that is not the case across the state. And so we're going to need to, we'll need to help out to raise those minimum standards. But those are some of the things I'm working on. Obviously, a lot in the law enforcement space where that's my assignment. Anyway, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And hopefully Jason walks in right on time to come on stage.
Council, any questions for our senator and representative?
I kind of got a question that I've been wondering.
Yeah,
So the hot buzzword is affordable housing.
yeah.
So whenever we have a developer come in here and pitch their idea, I've never once heard a developer say, we're gonna build low, cheap housing. It's always luxury, high-end housing,
Mhm.
like townhomes and apartments. How does that? So if we're allowing these high density, but they're always saying high-end luxury, that kind of seems counterproductive.
Nobody wants to market their product as cheap,
Right,
right?
but
Yeah.
high-end also means it's not gonna be
Affordable.
affordable. Just kind of curious, I know I don't want to say that there's a lot of developers on the legislator, but
No, but it seems like there really are.
And they're-
It seems
and they're
like
pushing
there are
it,
because
right.
they're very highly placed.
Yes.
Right now, yeah.
so as a council, how do we navigate that when we have developers that want to up zone? Did I say that right? Or down zone? I don't know.
Up zone.
Up zone, yeah,
So
for affordable housing, but then it's not affordable.
that's a good question. And I don't know that I can give you the answer to that. I'm happy to ask it
Well,
because that's what I do when I'm
Yeah.
not the expert in the room.
Yeah, neither one of us
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
tied to that, but, one thing I can say is if you guys are really worried about a bill that's coming forward, feel free to pick up the phone and text us or call us. Because we'll answer your calls and try to figure out what's going on with it. I personally, I think those decisions belong to the city, but there is this big push. I think probably the only critique they would give to North Ogden is that, it costs a lot to get a building permit, right? So they make an excuse that that's what's jacking up the price of housing, right? And I think you've got to be sensitive to those issues and plan ahead for that, but.
I mean, honestly, if I were having this conversation and not to just piggyback on what we said earlier, but I'd probably call Ogden. Say, how are you doing that? What's that looking like? If I were you, right? I'd call Ken Ritchie, call Ken,
Mhm.
call Ben Nadowski. Just say, you guys don't know him. Just,
Yeah.
All right, what does this look like for practical purposes? And if we're really to do this, and if this is the model we're supposed to be following, then what does that look like for us in city council? Because there's gotta be something that they picked up along that way. And that's pretty common, by the way, like in the legislature in general, we all have our things that we're good at or expertise in, but I'm not a realtor. I don't know, honestly. Like I can speak to some intelligence on natural resource policy because I did that for a career for a while, but I need Blake's opinion on real estate law or Cal, right? In the legislature. So
Sure.
anyway, good question.
Yeah, I think the most important thing though is the idea that, we need to know where your concerns are.
Yeah.
So that we can get more information. Like Brian said, we all have our specializations and, we're not necessarily good at everything, but But if we have a specific question that you have, especially if it's tied to a particular bill.
So I'll ask that question directly. I got your question down, right? I'll get back to you.
The question I have, is it seems to be missing in the affordable housing discussion is a statewide definition on what density means.
Mm.
You know, if you go to Ogden City and, you know, I know Ben and Luis and several others really well. You know, density in Ogden City can mean 40, 50 units to an acre in a high rise. That's high density.
Yeah,
That would be absurd density in North Ogden. Other communities here.
You don't really have the infrastructure for stuff like that.
Right, but
Fires,
there's,
you know.
when you have councils talking about density. And one council, if you go to some of our neighboring communities in the West County. High density is anything under an acre.
yeah.
Here in North
West Weaver
Ogden,
right now
it's,
because
you know,
of
a
that.
4,000 or
Yeah.
5,000 square foot lot, apartments, townhomes, kinds of things. I've wondered often if it might be beneficial for everybody if the state mandated some density definitions. That this is what it means. It doesn't matter what city you're in.
Yeah.
This is what high density means. And when we say you need to have high density, here's what it means.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all.
The other question that I don't think it's not a question, it's more of a statement, is that often it can feel from the state legislature that there is a shotgun effect. Being when there's an issue and there are communities that are creating that issue, that a heavy hand comes down and there's a shotgun where everybody gets affected, even
Potentially
those that
collateral
are not the problem. I'd like to see more of a rifle effect where we pick on those that are the problem and leave the rest of us alone. I'm assuming, of course, that we're not the problem.
You're not wrong. Everything that happens comes about in the law enforcement space because of a worst case scenario you don't want to know about.
Right.
Right. But then also that exact argument that you just used, totally valid, just got used in reverse in my business and labor committee today. Meaning the argument was we were being too specific to this use case. So it was like non-compete agreements that only applied here, and it was illegitimate because we didn't apply it to everyone in all the cases. Right, so I hear you,
Yeah,
but it's pretty funny, like,
well, do it our way, because that's.
I know, we'll do it your
Right.
way.
Well, you know, one of the
Rifle it is.
I think what you need to think about though is that what's your plan to solve, to deal with some of these problems that are up there?
Sure.
Because I think if cities were coming up with plans that were appropriate for their city, which actually makes more sense, right? Then it would be a lot easier for people in the legislature to say, you know what, these guys are doing a good job. We need to back off of this.
It's Representative Kyle, I'm gonna see if he's lost.
Yeah, so I really believe though that you can make your own proposals. You can make proposals that work for North Ogden, right? And you know, that's a major problem that people always bring up. And I think the more forward thinking you are, you know, what Ogden does may not be appropriate in North Ogden, right? So I just think you have to be somewhat proactive. And I know you guys, you know, planning commission, everything has done a good job of, you know, being forward thinking on some of these things, but the more cities solve the issues that everybody has, the easier it is for us to defend what's going on where we are.
I have found the prodigal son, he's found.
Thank you.
Representative Kyle, the
My
next 20 minutes is yours.
Well, I'll give you guys some time to.
We're just
Have that.
talking about issues that have come up that affect cities.
Affordable housing, you know, those issues, the big ones. Anything you'd like to add or tell us about?
You know, we've been dealing with, it seems like with all the controversial bills the first 2 weeks. I think the strategy was to get those out of the way and focus, and we can focus on the meat. So we're not marinating in the stuff that gets all the press the whole time, right? But I think there are some good things that have happened. We've seen Representative Dunnigan ran a great bill that came out of our committee that addresses how the cities and counties deal with volunteer workers, trying to give them some cover on insurance and workman's comp if they do it. It'll help cities and towns really recruit volunteers, so which we do all the time, right?
So that's one great bill that we've had come out, but yeah, as far as a lot of things that I don't know. Well, we've been focused on a lot of different things, but that's the biggest thing I've seen so far.
Yeah,
How are you enjoying your first session so far?
You know, it's great. It's it gives me a lot of confidence in the people I'm working with in this current legislature. I think we have a lot of great people that are really trying to get things done and really, you know, everyone has different opinions on things, right? But I think when we see people come together and sit down at the table, we have good things come out in the end. So I think it's a good group.
Wonderful.
you know, it's funny the perverse incentives we have as legislators because a lot of people believe that the mark of a good legislator is how many bills they pass. And, you know, I have a big belief that killing bad bills is actually a better thing. So, you know, I don't think any of us are afraid of killing bills that really cause problems. And that's why, you know, we may not be able to identify them the same way you can in terms of what's affecting you but, you know, I know the three of us are very open to helping out our constituents, helping out, you know, the cities that we represent.
I think that's true. Even some of my own bills, I think they're a good idea, and we start working with people, and then we get to a point where we go, you know what, this isn't actually needed. Let's kick it to the side. You know, so the more you learn, the better you can do, especially when you get different viewpoints coming out. Like, you know, if we have a bill that you guys would like to voice your opinion on, I'll always do it, right? We're easy to find.
It's a lot easier if you do it before the votes are taking place.
Yes.
Because at that point, the only thing you could do maybe is vote against it or speak against it. But if you know in advance, you can actually go to the bill sponsors and say, hey, my city's having a really hard time with this, and here's the problem. Or, you know, I've gotten a lot of emails about this particular bill, and here's the problem.
Council, any other questions yes, JD, Council Member Dalpass.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. I just wanted to make a statement. Please advocate for us on the moderate housing scenario for North Ogden, because we have several multi-housing projects that have already been approved. They might not have sprouted up yet, but we're talking almost 1,000 units or so that have been approved between Patriot Point, Village at Prominence Point, and Cooperstown Apartments at 1500 in Washington. So just know that, you know, from our perspective, at least from my perspective, we've been, you know, doing our part to alleviate that issue.
No, that's more than fair. North Ogden has been, again, you have not been the bad example used in any of these conversations, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes, no, I was just thinking about the difficulty of legislating over a bigger, broader demographic. You know, I see North Ogden, which is pretty homogeneous when it comes right down to it, but we have pockets that are very, very different experiences, even just in our little city, right? And then when we have to legislate something, it goes over everybody,
Right.
you know, and then I think if then we don't take care of business and then it gets kicked up to the state, then it blankets everybody even more, which really doesn't take into consideration all of the differences, you know, in the state of Utah. You're going to have really big differences of experience, you know, living in particular areas. And so I just applaud your, you know, personal directives to try to kick that over to the curb. I mean, you know, I joke every once in a while that it's like, I really wish we just had one ordinance, and that was like, don't cause a problem for your neighbor. That's really the, you know, one ordinance, and the neighbors be reasonable and then just do it, you know? And so like, the more we can get that perspective, I think, on our legislative, I think it's just makes things easier. I think there are good ideas that if we can just encourage and not have to legislate, you know, we see things happen, like I think
my husband was just saying, New York, California, they're now instituting some sort of policy that you can't be given disposable, like cutlery and things unless you specifically ask for it. It's like, well, that's a good idea. It's a win, it's a win for the restaurant. It's just a good idea. But then if we make a legislation about it, then it has to be written up. It's gotta be enforced. It's gotta, you know what I mean? Then it just makes government bigger and more expensive. So thank you.
So
I really appreciate that.
thank you for that. And, most of those issues should be taken care of by the constitutional oath. Right? Like there's a commitment there to liberty perspective. And that sometimes works and oftentimes you have to be reminded. So I appreciate that.
I think your point's a really good one though, because when I'm looking, I chair the Senate Education Committee. And, some of the things that we've done, people in North Ogden will say, well, why would you do that? That would like for instance, last year, we passed a bill on taking pornography out of school libraries. And people in North Ogden would say, why do you need that law? Right? That's not in our schools, and indeed it's not. But just this summer, I called in 3 school districts because they wouldn't comply with that law. And I felt like I needed to throw up after I looked at what actually has ended up in their libraries. And what really shocked me was the degree to which they fought doing that. Now, that wouldn't happen in North Ogden. It just wouldn't happen so far, right? But sometimes things become such a problem in the state that, people feel like we have to do something about it. And, the pressure from parents to do these things. So, you're right. It's hard, but that happens to be something that people in North Ogden would say, why do you need the law? But, I guess if we had that stuff, I'd really be mad about it. So.
Councilmember Severing, anything you'd like to add?
Just appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
We
Gentlemen.
really do appreciate the relationship we have with you. I hear from most of you all the time, right? So we need.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for serving our community. And go home and reintroduce yourself to your families tonight, unless you have more committee meetings.
8 o'clock. Yeah, this session, so they're.
So you can be home by 7
Thank you for
tonight.
making me.
But people that are here too.
Yeah.
I mean, we're happy to get we're happy to get your emails actually. And-
Please, that's probably good to say here. So if anybody's watching or whatever, please always include that you're in our district. When you're emailing us, like North Ogden, say, hey, I saw you at city council or something like that. We just get so much stuff that's like thousands a day from everyone, sometimes out of the country. I don't know why, but that's very helpful.
Like California, right?
Well, I get a lot of calls from Washington DC,
Yeah,
and they say they live in North Ogden, and
Right.
it's kind of interesting.
But we're here to represent you and we do get tons of email.
other influence and shit sent to us.
Yeah, instead of saying, for instance, my district now is 3, right? Instead of saying I'm from your district, it makes a lot more sense to say I'm from your district, District 3, right? And put a little bit of identifying information about where you don't have to give us your address, but it's a good idea to tell us about where you
It
live.
helps us, like, we're always in committees or whatever, but it helps our interns, like, sort through the thousands, so they can flag for us the stuff that we actually care about, which is you.
Would it help if it was like in a subject?
Yes,
Yeah,
even
that would
better.
be the best.
Yeah.
That really would be the best, and it's hard because we get hundreds of emails. On this school choice bill, that, I've gotten thousands of emails about it. And I started responding to them. Well, when I responded to them, the mail system comes back and says, that's not a valid email address. Well, I happen to know a lot about security and stuff. I started looking into the email and found out that, there's at least 100 emails in my box that were generated from some bot. Right, and so we're working on things to sort those out, but if you had something in the subject that really identified, who you are and where you're at and what you do.
And if for some reason our intern or us misses you during the session, please know we're not trying to miss you. Just like forward it again.
Right. So I'm House District 8.
Yeah, 7.
So House District 8 during redistricting, actually, it was mostly over in the valley, right, and down to Harrisville. And what happened is, Representative Wilcox, you picked up a lot of Harrisville, right? And Jason actually picked up the northern
North
part.
end of North Pine.
So what is it, everything above 3,200 or something?
The divide, yeah, basically. And then it winds up strange. They have to do it by census blocks, so it's not logical. Yeah, how that drawn and no way.
But I was actually really happy to bring in North Ogden, so.
Yeah.
How we can find out how to get your email.
Oh, just,
Where do we go?
the easiest way to do that is just le.utah.gov.
If you just Google Utah legislature, it'll probably come up and you can find.
And that's, you'll find committee stuff, you'll find our email and phone numbers and all the things.
You can even put your address in there and it'll show everyone that represents you.
If you want to follow a bill, that's pretty cool. Yeah, you plug your address in, it'll show you everybody. If you want to follow a certain bill, you can track a bill, it'll tell you every step along the way. When it gets numbered, what's going on, like if there's one I talked about that you're interested in, you can follow that through.
And if you want to make comments on a bill,
Yeah.
when it's being heard, you don't even have to go to the Capitol. You can actually just log into Zoom.
Anyway, we've accidentally turned this into a town hall, so. This is your meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you,
sorry.
gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Ed. Thank you.
You, council, for giving them the time that they needed. Okay, continuing on then with our active agenda, item number 8, discussion and/or action to consider an extension to the Family Promise Agreement. John Call, our city attorney, will be our presenter.
Thank you, council. So, council, this is an agreement that we have done several times with the Family Promise Group. This is the existing agreement that's on the screen. What they are asking for is this agreement contemplates an additional extension of 1 year under this paragraph 3 of the agreement. And they're just requesting that we would agree to that extension, which would start in July, but then give them another year. So really, it wouldn't expire for 18 months till today, or from today. And then we would need to come back with a full brand new agreement in 2024. As the extensions would begin to, or there would be extensions authorized under this existing agreement. So we just need some sort of direction from the council on the path you'd like us to go with this. Currently, there aren't plans for that property that would be impacted in the next year, I would think. So I don't see a reason from a staff perspective why this couldn't be extended.
Okay. Thank you, John. Council, any thoughts or comments? Family Promise is a great organization doing wonderful work. Any comments or thoughts?
I think we should extend it.
Okay. Councilmember Dalhouse.
I think it's a very good cause and I support it. One thing in the staff report that had me thinking is it is an old building. And I do worry about at what point do we have to be worried about, maybe the safety or the infrastructure not being appropriate to support people inside of it. So I would just ask for staff's, highest recommendations in the future to let us truly know if there's a safety issue or something that we should be considering. But other than that, I think it's a slam dunk.
Okay. All right, then we'll look then for a motion to approve agreement A01-2023 to extend the Family Promise Agreement for 1 more year.
Councilman, I guess we call you mayor tonight, don't we? Mayor Swanson, I move.
AU works just fine.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Hayyu, I move that we approve A01 2023, which is an extension to the family promise agreement.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. We'll have a roll call vote. Any further discussion before we take the vote? Okay, Councilmember Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpas,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you, council. Item number 9, discussion and or action to consider an interlocal agreement with Pleasant View City for the use of the Northview Senior Center. Presenter again is our city manager and attorney, John Call.
Thank you, council. So this is an agreement, that's several years in the making. The Northview Senior Center the building is owned by North Ogden City. The majority of the senior activities are either funded by the county, like the lunches and the dinner are funded by the county, or by the Northview Senior Citizens Group, which is a separate 501c3. And we have routinely asked Pleasant View to participate in the cost of the facility. And based on the estimates of usage, there's about 19% of the people over there who come from Pleasant View. And with our annual maintenance for the facility of $64,000, the request was to have them cover $12,000 worth of expenses. My understanding is that Pleasant View, there are those at Pleasant View who are okay with that number. There are others who feel that North Ogden is too controlling of that facility. And there's members of the senior board who are, they currently get $5,000 a year from Pleasant View to help with their programming. And there's some concern that they would be losing that $5,000 in favor of North Ogden getting 12. And so the agreement that was in your packet is the agreement that came over from, I couldn't tell you exactly, I got it from Amy Maybe. So I'm not sure who she showed it to or who responded to. I sent them a draft version and they sent back some comments. So I don't think that this is a final agreement at this point. So it'd be really good to probably spend some time focusing on the language in this agreement. And if there's something that you agree with or disagree with, let's talk it through. I don't know necessarily, obviously the council could pass it tonight. And then if there's a change suggested by them, then we could talk about the changes. Because obviously both sides have to agree before that you actually have an agreement. And agreements between councils are particularly hard, particularly when you've got a third party who's not included in this agreement. With it, that being the Northview Seniors. Although there is some language that's been added. Let's see where oh, sorry, it's up here at the top. There's some language added by Pleasant View that was focusing on the idea of the senior center being with a focus of it being on senior services, that sort of thing. There's just some of the tension between North Ogden City and the Northview Senior Board is focused on when we rent the building out for other uses, who has priority and when. And the policy that this council's seen, the council didn't pass the policy, but it's one that the mayor and I put together that just says they can schedule it up to 12 months in advance, just like North Ogden City can. And then when we start doing the private rentals, they're allowed to do it 6 months out. So once it gets into that 6 month range, then it's the first come, first served basis. And most of the times we can accommodate them. But sometimes there's a conflict and if we're in that 6 months, we just say, well, there's another group that's already planning to use it, the Kiwanis or there's other organizations who use it. So anyways, what are some questions or concerns that you saw as you read through this agreement, council?
Councilmember Dalpas.
I serve on the senior board and the city council representative that's involved in what goes on over there. And from my perspective, I am supportive of generally the way that this is written. If there are any members of the senior board that have any questions or even take issue with the fact that they're not going to get a donation into their board, into their budget instead of going towards the operating expenditures, then just to let me know, from my perspective, at least from the numbers that I've seen from the board meetings, their account is healthy enough that it can sustain a lack of, you know, if it's $5,000 or $6,000 per year that was being contributed to them. I would feel very confident that it would be a long, long time that they would see any issue in that, especially with the way that they run things. They're very financially conscious in the way that they do things. I feel like they do things in a really good way, so I wouldn't be concerned about that. But if there is anyone that has a question about that, just to reach out to me. So I kind of like the way that it's written.
Thank you, Councilman. Other comments or questions? Councilmember Barker.
I'm actually in favor of this as well. In my opinion, I think we should table this because right now we don't have an agreement. And I've heard from the mayor of Pleasant View that this is probably not gonna get passed tonight in Pleasant View. So if it doesn't get passed there and we pass it, we're right back to where we started. So I'm actually gonna make a motion that we table this until we hear back from Pleasant View.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table then that we postpone this item until Pleasant View has taken its vote this evening or decided how it feels about things. Is there a second?
So didn't we have a clarification between tabling something and postponing it? So are we postponing it? Is that? the
Yes,
proper
we don't
language?
actually table things. Tabling it would be leaving it to a later portion of the same meeting. Yeah.
Okay,
I will amend my motion to postpone this till a future date.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This would be a voice vote, correct, Joyce? Yes, okay. All those in favor of postponing this until we hear more from Pleasant View, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this has been postponed. Thank you, Councilman Barker, for making that motion. Item number 10. Discussion and or action to consider a petition of annexation for property located at approximately 2117 North Washington Boulevard. Our city manager and attorney, John Call, once again takes the stage.
Okay, thank you. So council, this is not the most important formal part of your hearing or of this process. We have a complete application that has been received. The first thing the council does is accept the complete application and say, we've got it. And that starts the timeline for the hearings and the notices to go out. So we're right at the very beginning of it. We do have the applicant here. If you have any questions for Mr. Farr, but I'm gonna, as you can tell, this is the property, which all of you can see clearly, you know where that is. So I'm gonna pull up a map, a Google Earth map, so that you can get a better idea of the property. So, because most of you probably know the property. But I'm just gonna highlight it for the group. So box storage are these buildings right here. And then there's a power substation in this area. The duplex that is yet to be demolished, but is supposed to be demolished, is right here, that vacant one. And the area that we're talking about is property in this area where it's in the county. There are some parcels that are in the city in this area too, but the idea is that this would be an annexation plat to bring all of the property, that little island, into the city. That would go through the planning commission, through Scott's guidance with the planning commission on a recommendation for a zone designation. And then come back to the council. What we anticipate being asked for is essentially an extension of the townhomes that have been going into the south of this property. Some sort of a connected multifamily unit mix with maybe some commercial, but those are things that haven't been dialed in yet. But the idea is it would be redeveloped into something that works along the Washington Boulevard corridor. So, like I said, Mr. Farr is here if you have questions for him. Scott's here if you have questions for him.
Approximately how many acres?
There's no approximate about it. It is exactly 1.003 acres.
Okay,
So. And a good example, and you like I said, you can't see it on here. Washington Boulevard is actually out here. So the portion that's being annexed is not the entire area I was showing you. It's just, it would help complete the unity of ownership and, well, there's already unit of ownership, but unity of municipality is probably the better way to say it. So.
wonderful. Okay, thank you, John. Council, any questions for John or for Scott Hess? Or for the applicant?
So this is just the initial part where we just say yay or nay on applying for annexation,
Accepting the paperwork.
accepting the paperwork, and then the actual usage will be discussed at a later date. But
Yeah.
first we need to get it in the city and start that process.
So this is one of those administrative items where they've submitted a complete application, so you can't say no to accepting the application. But at a future date, there'll be a designation for the zone, and that's the legislative portion where the council has the option of saying, no, we won't grant that zone. Or my anticipation is, yes, we would grant that zone. So I don't want to make it sound like there's a problem in the future, but I think that the applicant has some ideas that will come through planning commission back to the council that will answer questions and show you, at least get you a plan in front of you so you can say yes or no.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
Okay,
With that in mind,
Yeah.
I move that we consider the annexation for property located at 2117 North Washington Boulevard.
okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Ekstrom. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
So, Councilwoman Ekstrom, I think what you meant to say that we accept the application.
Accept, yes, not just consider.
Yeah.
Actually accept. Thank you. We have considered and we have accepted.
are we good on the motion, John?
We just need.
And
second.
still second.
And still seconded. Okay, great, wonderful. This would be a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're to item number 11. Council Department reports. Tonight we'll hear from 4 different council members. Let's start with you, Councilmember Barker, and Parks and Recreation.
All right, so I've got an update from Jamie, our parks supervisor. Is that his correct title?
Yes.
Okay. They're taking down all the holiday lights and decorations. They're also doing maintenance on all their equipment, getting it ready for the new season. They're also doing a whole lot of training, doing their continuing education during this January, February, March months. And they will be having a full-time position opening up. Should go out and do an interview soon. So just watch for that if anyone's interested working for our parks. And then finally, the Polar Plunge was Saturday. And I was able to go for the first little bit and it was the biggest I've ever seen. I was hoping to get a number of people that jumped in the water, but
Justin said, well, they figured they had almost 300 people in attendance.
Yeah.
With 50 or 60 participants jumping in the water, and the Special Olympics raised $10,000+.
so it's growing every year and Justin's doing a great job with it.
Great, thank you for that report. Councilmember Dalpas, Building and Planning.
Sure, thank you. Wanted to let everyone know that there's an open position on the planning commission right now. Myself, the chairman of the planning commission, Eric Thomas, Scott Hess, and Mayor Berube participated in some interviews yesterday. And so we got a really good idea of how great our candidates were, and we've been going back and forth on the advantages and disadvantages of the people that have applied. More advantages than disadvantages, I will report. There's a lot of good people that have applied, so we will be making a decision on that. If anyone's curious, the position was Alan Lunt's position. And we'll be coming to a conclusion at a soon date on that. So stay tuned for that. A couple more points. Scott just wanted to mention that single family subdivisions are, remarkably, still coming through. There's quite a few building permits that are still happening, even considering how the economy is right now. And so I think that that's a very promising sign. Patriot Point is continuing to be constructed. That keeps the building department very busy with inspections right now. So that's a big part of their work right now. And then interesting that Cooperstown Apartments on 1500 Watt and Washington, that there's been an agreement that has been worked out with Ogden City on that boundary line. And so we should start to see some information coming through first, of course, Planning Commission and then down to City Council. So I hadn't heard anything on that for a while. So that's a update that I was interested in. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Dowdus. Councilmember Severing, let's jump over to you in the police department.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me pull up the information Chief Quinney sent me. Chief Quinney just wanted everybody to know that it's time to renew dog licenses. Come in the police department to get yours renewed if you haven't already. Thanks to everyone for following the winter parking ordinance so our plows can keep our streets clean. Chief Quinney mentions that we've had a few cars stolen in North Ogden that were left unattended when they were being warmed up. So please don't leave your cars running up or running to get warm, leaving them unattended. And then just a reminder that if you see something suspicious and it seems wrong, call.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. Appreciate that report. I'll report now on finance. We are 50% of the year. The fiscal year has elapsed. Our general fund revenues are at 54%, even though we have yet to receive our November sales tax. We have received our property tax allotment though, so that helps a lot with the revenue. General fund expenditures are at 48%, 50% through the year. Building fees are at 40%. Utility fund revenues are still on target right at 50%. The city is operating as budgeted. The audit committee will be meeting on Thursday, February 6th at 6 p.m. And there is more budget education coming, council, as we leap headfirst into our budget session, our budget season. Speaking of our budget season, a couple of comments on that. First of all, now is the time for each of us to be getting together with the departments for which you are the liaison and start having those budget discussions with your respective departments so that we can be prepared as we move forward. There will be couple of policy discussions regarding the budget that we'd like you, it'd be good if you started thinking. One is when it comes to the services that are provided by North Ogden City, start thinking about, are we looking to reduce those services? Are we looking to maintain those services as they are? Are we looking to increase those services moving forward? So just kind of establishing a baseline where we are as a city regarding the services and items that we provide for the residents through our budgeting process, and so that we have an idea of where we'd like to start, where that base would be. The other is a discussion that has come up recently as I've met with John and Jamie talking about the budget, is it's a policy discussion on whether we buy local or we buy at the least costly location possible. Each of you have before you a simple example with red Dixie cups. And these are real numbers regarding Dixie cups and their costs. So you can see that depending on where we buy them, we can get them for 5 cents a piece, or we can get them all the way up for 12 cents a piece. And obviously, Dixie cups are not the part that's gonna make or break the budget, but it's the overall principle of when we are in a position where we could buy local, but it's at double or more the cost, do we buy local to support local, or do we go with a less costly alternative that would mean we're not supporting local business? So not something we'll get into tonight. I expect a robust policy discussion about that, but it's something for us to think about as we exercise our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of North Ogden. Okay. And then budget schedule. Our first budget meeting will be March 28th. And that will be our priorities and highlights. That's the work session where we will talk about these policy discussions, the baseline, where are we with services, the buy local versus buy most cost effective, and other policy discussions. That will be the event for that night. April 11th, April 25th, May 2nd, May 9th, and June 13th, unless we were to find ourselves in a truth and taxation situation again this year. Okay. That's where we are on finance. We will be on February 7th in the afternoon at 3. The Citizens Committee will be receiving its initial training. The Citizens Budget Committee and its 9 members will be receiving their initial training to be some additional eyes for council as we go through the budget process. And pardon?
That would be in conjunction with.
No, that'll be at 3 in the afternoon. It'll be myself, Jamie, John, and that committee. The communication method from the committee will, the committee itself, as they have questions about the budget, they will give those questions to Randy Wynn, who's on the audit committee and has agreed to be the liaison between the audit committee / council and that committee. So questions that come up regarding various departments, various budget questions will be given to Randy, and he'll bring those to the respective liaisons and department heads where those questions can be answered. John and Jamie as well contributing to those answers. And then it will be reported back to the committee during their next meeting. Okay.
Councilman.
Yes.
So those will also be on YouTube. So even though they won't be an official
The
meeting
committee
with
meetings,
minutes
yes.
and that subcommittee, they'll be on YouTube. They'll be in this room at kind of a table out here. So that residents can watch, listen, and see some of the additional details that are in the budget.
And residents are welcome to attend that meeting as well.
Yep.
It being a public meeting, and to I'm sure that our co-chairs, both of whom are here tonight, will make sure that the public has an opportunity to make comments during those committee meetings. Okay, that's all I have for finance. So where did I put the rest of my agenda? There it is. We are now to item number 12, public comments. If you have anything that you'd like to comment on that we've discussed tonight or that we haven't discussed, now's the time to do so. Please step up to the mic, state your name, the city that you live in, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. John, if you'll watch for hands raised online, please. Anybody here?
Good evening, Susan Clements. I live here in North Ogden. Councilmember Severing, how's and I don't, you may not need to answer right now, but I'm just wondering how the new building is coming. Are we on track to be finished when we were going to be finished? Or are we on track budget wise? Maybe that's more Councilmember Swanson. How's the building?
Yeah, I haven't been, other than what I've been told by Chief Quinney, I think we're moving along successfully.
And no out of the ordinary change orders have come through.
Okay.
The ones that have come through have been handled by John and the mayor and
And the committee.
and the committee that were assigned to handle those.
And the biggest issue we have seen is groundwater. So we had to do some additional work on the foundations and footings for groundwater control.
And so that's been resolved.
Yes.
Okay. I was hoping the mayor would be here as council member sponsor knows, I've been around for a while and have attended meetings. And it's so wonderful to be done. 8:30.
Remind the mayor how early we can get things done.
I lose the week at
I should probably mention, we do have a Neil Barubi.
A Barub online.
So I believe he is participating online now that his plane is landed.
Yeah. Oh,
That's wonderful, because I think he's done a wonderful job controlling this council. And back in the day, we used to hang around for like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I just appreciate that he kind of keeps you guys in line and on topic. And he doesn't crack the whip too much, but I think he's done a very good job. And I think you, the council, have done a good job, and John's doing a pretty good job. keeping them in line. So, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone online, John?
No raised hands.
Anyone else here attending tonight? Okay, we'll move on then to,
Did have a hand just pop up.
okay,
Susan Kilborn would like to make a comment.
Susan.
Greetings from Sin City.
Ogden?
Oh, you know, out of this whole conversation, that's the best line ever. No, my husband and I are in Las Vegas celebrating our anniversary, but I just wanted to say two things. First of all, you guys did a great job without the oh great bearded one. And Phil, your hair looks just suave rico as usual. And you brought up a very important point that my husband and I were nodding our heads here about with your Dixie cup example. So right on, we need to save money. I understand that we need to support our local businesses, but let's us citizens do that, and you guys do your work and spend our money judiciously and on the things we really need. And I sure do appreciate all you guys. And I am doing my due diligence. We were supposed to go see Adele tonight. Be jealous. But the tickets are like $1,500 minimum for one person. So talk about budgets. We restrained ours. We're going to see Chris Angel. Okay, you guys, sorry to take up your time. Go home, have fun. Everyone be safe, and I'll enjoy the sun for all of you guys.
Thank you very much. Always entertaining. Anyone else?
Last time, Brenda Ashdown, I live in North Ogden. Last time Phil told me I'd gone too long without making a comment, so. Don't really have anything to say, but I will. I have been invited to be on the Budget Citizen Committee. I'm just a little concerned. My information is not correct, so I'm not getting any information, emails. I'm not getting anything that's going on, and I understand there have been some meetings with John that we've been invited to that I have not been aware of. This might sound very petty, but if I'm involved in a committee, I want to be on that committee. I don't want my name associated with it if I have not been included, especially if there's any kind of recommendations going forward. I want to know what they are so I can either vocally support them or not. So that's my 2 cents today. Thank you.
Brenda, will you get with myself or John after the meeting so we make sure we have your correct information so that you can be,
And the only meetings that have, it's me and Doug have met, but I haven't met with any of the other committee members. So the February 7th will be the initial meeting.
Okay, so let me speak to everyone in the room, in particular, Brenda and Sandy, right? And let's see, Ben. There you are. Okay, now I know who you are. I requested your contact information some time ago and finally received it on January 20th. I brought a copy of it here with me to make sure that it's accurate, so that we can include you. We heard maybe maybe a month ago that you two were on it, and you, I think, are a relatively recent addition to this subcommittee. So Brenda and the rest of the other two of you have not been excluded. I just didn't know how to get in touch with you. But now I do, and I came here tonight specifically to make sure that I had your contact information correct. And so can you stick around for you three, just a couple of minutes after? And because Sandy, I found out in this same email that you and I are going to be co-chairs of this committee. I would like to meet. Did you see my email that I sent?
I did just before this meeting.
Yeah. Maybe the three of us could pick a time when we get together and make sure we understand the agenda, if you will, and not to discuss or, you know, the purpose for this, not to circumvent the purpose for this subcommittee, but to just make sure that I understand what this training is going to amount to. And, you know, I'm a little bit in the dark, but I'm taking the leap of faith and having confidence in you and Jamie that it's going to be okay. So I didn't know we need to be trained, but we do need to understand the budgeting process. So if you could kind of give us a general idea of what this training is going to amount to.
Can do.
Appreciate that. That way I can sleep a little better at night, not get nervous about it.
Okay. No blind sides.
Yeah, thank you. So stick around just for a couple minutes after this. Thank you very much. And I do have just a question. How many wells do we have in North Ogden? Question come up in my mind.
We have 4 active and then 3 that are not active.
Not active, meaning they don't come to church on Sunday.
Yes.
Are they just, were they active at one point being in use, and were they just kind of been capped off and held in reserve, or
They've had test drills, but they haven't been brought into the system.
okay, so they're kind of waiting until they're needed, right? Okay. And then one more thing. How am I doing in my 5 minutes?
Got about a minute and a half left.
Okay, I won't take that much. About the family promise extension and the, not really concerned, but just observation that we should be aware of the condition of the buildings. That's the old fire station, right? Okay. My wife and I have personally stayed in that in the family promise effort probably 3 times, and I'm quite impressed with the building. I know it's old, but I wouldn't have called it old. It's still rock solid in my opinion, and not to say we shouldn't, you know, keep an eye on it, but it's a good place in my opinion. Just thought I would let you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you 3 after for just a couple minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, seeing no one else get up, we'll move on then to mayor, council, and staff comments. Let's start with staff. David Espinoza. Bryce. Let's see, oh, you're not our engineer anymore. I almost called on you there. Scott. John?
I just so you know, we did submit the 4 ramp applications. The ramp board will be starting their discussion. I found out right before this meeting that there were $9 million in requests for the major ramp grant. So that's those requests are the ones that would compete with the community pond request. As our discussion, we did put on all of our projects that we would accept partial funding. Meaning that those projects that are gonna move forward, regardless of the ramp process it just helps because they might come and say, well, we'll give you 25,000 for the pond, but not the 500 plus you asked for. So, but just so you know, that's happening and we should hear back from the board sometimes by the end of February. They have a public meeting down at the county who they make a recommendation and the county commissioners approve it or do the official final stamp of approval. So, but if you have questions about that, I'm still the point person on that until further notice.
Okay. Joyce, another J.
Nothing.
Okay, and our last J, Jamie. Nothing, okay. Did I get everybody, all of our staff members? Yes.
One follow-up, the police are doing a traffic study on Mountain Road. Not with any specific goal in mind, but just to get a better understanding. One bit of information that came back is, before we split the signs, we had 4 accidents at the intersection of Mountain Road and 2600. Since we've switched the signs, we haven't had any accidents there. But as was brought up to the council, there have been slide offs to the south. And so this next stage of the study is going to be focusing on speeds and things like that with the roadway design to see if maybe there's something that needs to be addressed there. So.
Slide offs.
Waiting the turkeys.
Okay, council. Councilmember Dowpass, anything?
No.
Councilmember Severin,
Nothing.
Councilmember Extra. Councilmember Barker. Nope. And I have nothing. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to conduct safe travels. Look now for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.